You're listening to The Paul Higgins Show, where ambitious tech consultants come to unlock their potential. After 18 years as a global leader, I launched several businesses, culminating in a successful exit. I'm sharing what I learned, plus what's working now from mentoring tech consultants. You will hear leaders within our industry to help you build a business you love that allows you to do what you want. If you are looking for immediate cash flow wins to fuel your growth, go to our free ebook at paulhigginsmentoring.com/roadmap. You install a new sales CRM into a client and you know that the owner and potentially they might have one or two salespeople just don't have the capacity and the bandwidth to do the front end of the sales funnel. Hello, this is Paul Higgins and welcome to episode 550 of the Paul Higgins Show. And in this podcast, I talk to Filip Popov from Growth Era, so that's ERA, about outsourced SDRs to fill that gap where your client just doesn't have the capacity to work on the front end of the funnel. Filip currently works as VP of Partnerships at Growth Era. His background is deep in sales, starting from an SDR, then working to a customer success and an account executive. He was the key figure in a lot of the experimentation while scaling Growth Era around the prospecting approach, company structure and management, and also crystallizing the ICP. If you'd like to see Filip on video, go to Paul Higgins Mentoring, our YouTube channel. And now what I'll do is hand you over to Filip Popov from growthera.com. So that's growthera.com. Great to have you here, Filip.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm excited because we've had so many different episodes on the topic of sales, but we've never had someone on talking about outsourced SDRs. So really excited by this, and I know it's a gap that a lot of you who are listening today have. So why don't we kick off with who your ideal clients are and what problems you love to solve for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So primarily, we focus on the U.S. market. I mean, the companies themselves can be from France or Turkey or Denmark or wherever, but they need to focus on the U.S. market. They need to get sales from U.S. companies and Canada, I would say. So just that North American side. When it comes to company sizes, really, Paul, we work with anyone from like 3 people consulting companies to, up to $1 billion organizations. We tend not to be too picky on the size of the organization. I think the ones that we've had probably the most success and a lot of chemistry with have been companies that have been 20, 30, maybe up to 50 employees, where it's not too small, where a lot of people wear a lot of hats, but at the same time it's not too big where you kind of like get lost in the bureaucracy and people just forwarding emails and someone doesn't respond. You're kind of like stuck there. Typically, it's either founder-led sales, the owner, president, whoever, co-founder, they're doing sales actively, or they just moved away. They just transitioned from that phase, and now they have a single salesperson. It's up to the salesperson to find new leads, to find new business. When it comes to the types of products and services, tend to be agnostic on this side as well. So any form of SaaS, we're very good with manufacturing companies, those that produce custom machinery or do electrical power grid installation or maintenance in facilities, for example. Waste management companies, cybersecurity. There's plenty of those that we work with, we've helped with, we've been partners for a very long time. There's some that we typically don't work with that are like a super commodity sale. For example, a digital marketing company, someone that does just content marketing or advertising or insurance is also one. Recruitment can be a hit or miss. And the reason why we don't work with these companies, not that they're bad or anything, but we just couldn't help them from a cold outbound side. From our experience, it is still very hard to differentiate, their value prop and how it measures versus other companies in a cold marketplace, specifically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think given the audience who is normally listening, I think there's not many of those companies listening today. And I suppose so. Thanks for giving us a bit of a snapshot. But outsourced SDRs. people will hear that and have their own interpretation of what that is, right? And it's a bit like the word sales. It means different things to
Mm.
different people. So just give your practical experience of what an outsourced SD is, and then we'll go into what it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just with that SDR offering is how we built the business in the first place. That's still kind of like the majority of sales where we get from, aside from the other service offerings that we now have. But when it comes to SDRs, I was an SDR myself in the very beginning when I started at this company. It was very new to me. I still kind of think it's a new thing overall. I think I read this statistic in I think 2022. There was about 700,000 SDRs globally. And then 2023 was over 1 million. So it's on the rise. It was certainly present, I would say maybe 15 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago, not at that level, not at this level. Right now, we have a lot of companies on the tech side of things who offer data, who are very good at sales engagement, sales intelligence, these sort of things. So this practically enables all of these SDRs to actually do proper work and just be more focused, make more dials, send more emails, just interact with prospects on a much larger scale and more efficiently. But the job itself it tends to be very hard. I mean, sales in general, right? It's hard. It's
Yes.
emotionally draining at times, and especially as an SDR, which is in most cases an entry level job position, it can be something that a lot of people wouldn't take in the very beginning. Typically, we run about 1 to 2 new training groups per month to get more SDRs internally, so that we can deploy them on client accounts. And I haven't checked the last numbers, but it's around 30%, 40% retention rate. People it's a 4-week curriculum, so we tend to train them for about a month before we actually employ them. Just the typical vetting process. But yeah, you would typically see people falling off after week 1, just saying that, oh, this is definitely not for me. It's totally different than what I expected. A lot of people think it's kind of like an autopilot, or very frequently people they tend to think that SDRs or just outbound sales is something that call centers do. I think we have definitely evolved from being a call center to actually professional prospecting work nowadays. That was usually typically something that account executives, actual salespeople used to do on kind of like their spare time, or dedicate more time so that they can get new sales opportunities. Now it's just a specialized role. I think just people's understanding that it's not a call center is one of those things that sometimes I find myself and we find ourselves the need to explain. And yeah, other than that, I can also say there's a shelf life this role. That's something that I've seen it on myself after just I think just after a couple of months when I started as an SDR, I wanted to have more challenges. I wanted to do more things. Maybe it's ambition. I don't know. I don't know if everyone thinks this way, but you will frequently see SDRs that are good SDRs that are 2 to 3 years working on the same job position. Now they suddenly want to move up. They want to be either something towards a customer success manager or an account executive. Those are kind of like the 2 paths that we see when it comes from a career development stage for an SDR.
Yeah, great. And what are some of the things that an SDR would do versus some of the things that, say, an AE or an account executive would do? What's the difference? Where's
Yeah.
the line between the 2 roles?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, for us, SDRs just do pure prospecting. We have a specialized role in our company, which is sales operations. They're the ones who provide the data to the SDR. They manage that data. They make sure that all the contact information for the people that they're prospecting, there's verified emails, there's verified phone numbers, they're there. So the SDR just needs to hop on that seat and just make the dials and send the emails. In a lot of cases, we also do automated emails so that you can send manual ones to only those that have expressed some sort of interest, kind of like an 80-20. But yeah, I would say that the biggest differentiating factor is the SDR is doing the volume work to find people and book them on sales meetings where they can get a much better perspective on the product or the service that's being offered. Typically, a cold call lasts about 2 or 3 minutes. I've read this statistic that it takes about between 2 to 7 minutes for someone to get more comfortable speaking with you, 2 to 7 minutes of active conversation. Now, that can be one call, one 5-minute call, for example, or that can be 3 or 4 calls over a period of a couple of weeks. And you have that constant interaction with that prospect, and maybe you provide some social proof. You go back and forth on some questions. It's not the right time, they're busy, so you just follow up next week or the week after, and you kind of like over time build that trust, so that at one point it's a good time, and they just believe that what you're offering might help them, so they help on a more proper sales meeting, a discovery meeting with the account executive. But at the same time, I also think account executives should prospect a bit, not to get rusty. I do it sometimes myself. I think I also have a LinkedIn post on this, but last year there was this one day where I took upon myself to do a lot more cold calls than usual. And I think like I had 4 connections that were instant rejections. Like people didn't even let me speak. So it was like kind of like a nice refresher to go back to the old days when I just started with SDR work and just get a good feel of how it was to be in that role.
Yeah, and I listen to a lot of podcasts in this field, and Jason Bay Outbound's one. Trying to think of the John Morrow, I think it is. There's a few that I listen to, and there's that debate. I think in tougher economic times, I think the pressure goes back to, okay, AE, you've got to do more than just get fed leads. You've got to go out and find your own. So I think that's definitely the case. I suppose for you listening, and a reminder, it's Filip Popov, episode 550, that you're normally the owner that is doing it, right? So you're doing all of it. So it's sort of taking that front end out of the job. And like how many calls a day is a typical SDR making?
For us, about 100 calls per day. We tend to make in total about 150 sales activities, and usually 100 of those are phone calls. And the other 50 are a combination between manual email, some LinkedIn. It really depends on an account by account basis. For some industries that we target, we see that cold calling works much better than the other 2 channels. And in others, email maybe works better, LinkedIn works better. We try to keep ourselves open-minded when it comes to which channel success comes from. I can tell you a couple of years ago when COVID hit and everyone went back to working remotely from their homes, LinkedIn was by far the best channel to do outreach. There were also no restrictions on LinkedIn on how many people you can add. And it was, I guess, much more acceptable to be pitched on LinkedIn, and people just accepted those offers. Whereas now, I guess the LinkedIn strategy is shifted a bit differently. It's they added a lot more restrictions, and now you need to have your LinkedIn social score index and whatnot. What we've seen is that cold calling has been back on the menu for quite some time, and I think like 86% of our meetings when we schedule them come from calling in general.
Yeah, and on the LinkedIn, are they doing the owner's account? Are they doing their own account? How does it work from a LinkedIn perspective?
Typically, our own accounts. So if an SDR is working on a client account, they would add in the description that they're part of the organization and that they're a specialist. That's how we typically do them. There have been a couple of instances that I can remember where the owner of the company we're working with, they just couldn't find the time to actually go over their LinkedIn, and they had a large network. So they asked us, hey, can you guys manage this on kind of like not even a part-time basis, but like half an hour a day at most. So it's always been fruitful for us.
Yeah, great. And I know we do a lot of LinkedIn. That's sort of the key way that we've been driving leads for tech consultants. And we do some pre-engagement before we do the initial contact. With cold calling, is there any pre-engagement, or is it just purely straight to a call at first?
Yeah, definitely there's a bit of pre-engagement. I mean, it depends on what you mean by that, but what I can say is that we use the Justin Michael method. It's made by this guy called Justin Michael. Shout out to him. Maybe some of the listeners will know of him, but he's been in this space for a very long time. I think maybe 2 decades or more. The strategy there is kind of like a 2-step approach, wherein the first step is usually you just get into a cold call. You try to understand if you're speaking with the right person, if they're in charge of what your solution you're providing in general, and then try to tell them more about how you've helped other companies in the same space improve their operational efficiencies or reduce their cost on in certain areas, and try to provide a case study, any type of social proof that actually says those things and that business benefit. Kind of like a more lighter way to enter into a conversation with someone, not to be too bold, too rigid. Hey, this is Philip, or this is Paul. We do this. You want to hop on a meeting? No, I mean, kind of like calling them out of the blue, and they're not expecting your call. You're interrupting their day, so just take it a bit slower. And then usually 80% of sales comes from follow up. So we try to focus on that follow up game. Just not being pests, but still being persistent enough. Making sure that we touch them a couple of days during the week, whether through phone, through email, through LinkedIn, a sequence-based approach. And it really consists of just sending more social proof, highlighting some of the challenges these other companies had that we've helped them, that we assume their company also has. And just pretty much staying in contact, staying on top of their mind. And, if we don't get the no, we kind of assume that they do have these challenges, and it's just a matter of time when it's going to be the right time to hop on a conversation.
Yeah, sure. I know it's a bit like a piece of string, but how many follow-ups in general? I've heard there's so many stats out there. It used to be 7, some have now said 11, some have said 14. Like, I don't know. How do you guys do it at growth era?
It's a good question. I think that number tends to shift around a bit. What we've seen when targeting small and medium-sized businesses, anywhere between 7 to 15 touches, I would say, is when we book the meeting. When going after enterprise and just larger organizations, we tend to extend that to about 25, 28 at times. I've seen, just because it's a bit harder to get executives at those larger organizations. They're just imagine how many emails they have to sift through the day, and then also a lot of cold calling, I would assume. I would say those are pretty much the numbers.
Yeah, and unfortunately, well, the upside these days is we've got so many ways to communicate with people. The downside is we've got so many, right? There's cell, text and SMS, there's WhatsApp, there's Slack. The list could go on and on. Like, you listening to Philip and I, you might have 10 different ways that people are contacting you, from your customers, your clients, and to people outbound. Like, we've talked about LinkedIn, the phone, and email. Do you use any other forms?
Those have been the standard ones. I mean, in the past, we've definitely used SMS text. I've personally found a lot of success with SMS. Sometimes it can be a bit, intrusive, because you're really texting someone's direct mobile phone. So sometimes they don't want to mix their mobile phone versus their work phone. We've tried some prospecting on Twitter, not too much success, I would say. So I guess just sticking at the moment with what we've seen that works. But we're always open to test things out.
Yeah. And I know that I've heard sometimes where someone will send an SMS to declare that they're going to call, because most of us now screen phone calls, right? Especially numbers that are unidentified. So is there any way that, or have you guys ever tried that approach?
Yeah, we've actually have done it. We also do another interesting thing, which maybe some of the listeners can implement on their own. It's kind of like a bit risky, but just putting the prospect's phone number in the subject line, something like "is" and then number, your phone or your number, so that it makes people just jump a bit and say, "Wait a minute, how does this person know my phone number? What do they want?" So it just attracts a bit of attention. But yes, like you mentioned, just telling them that, hey, I'm gonna call you. At least they have the heads up that way. It's not a purely cold call, but they're kind of like expecting that they're gonna receive a phone call.
Yeah, and I'm sure with your training, you sort of go through the different countries and the different standards in different countries, and the different compliance and privacy rules, which are sort of complex. But and as far as so if I am an owner and I'm thinking, like I could test this, right? What are some of the signs that you look for to know whether someone would be right to to test an outsourced SDR? Like, what are some of you mentioned a few of them at the top, but what are some of the indicators that you're looking for?
One key thing is obviously ROI math. I mean, we're in business. It needs to make sense for both sides. And typically when we look at the ROI, we want our customers to experience at least a 4x return of their investment. And that is largely tied with how much they price their products. Typically, companies that have $100 software a month or like a $500 software a month are not good companies that we can work with, just because it will take a huge amount of volume to actually gain profit from that. Typically, bigger SaaS companies are what we're aiming for, or just bigger or just companies who sell larger equipment or more pricey services. But other than that, we also want to work with companies who have good expectations, and they're not in this game just to test things out for a couple of weeks or 1 or 2 months, and then if it's not working out, then you just burn everything. We haven't had a successful engagement with companies like those. Typically, people who know that all of this takes time. You need to build pipeline over a long period of time. You need to have prospects in the back burner who are going to re-engage in 6 months from now and 9 months from now. Those are still active opportunities, but there's time that needs to run through so that you can get to them again. Can't think of too many customers where they've closed deals in the first 3 to 6 months. It has to be like, you really got to have the best offering ever. Maybe the only ones that we've helped like that are the ERC, tax credit returns, those type of companies when they spawned out after the pandemic, because it's free money. you don't have to pay anything. You just have people that file on your behalf. But other than those, it's typically at least about 6 months, and a lot of sales opportunities, a lot of meetings that we generate where 1 or 2 start popping, and then you kind of like go into a good motion, into kind of like a well-oiled machine, and opportunities and deals get closed over larger periods of time.
And what's the key metrics? Like, what are the things? So, if I'm going to, pay for 6 months with the view of, 6 months plus I get the reward, right? That's a big commitment.
Yeah.
But what are the key metrics that I'm expecting? Is tell us how you measure a successful campaign.
Number of qualified meetings. That's really the main metric that we're aiming for. There are also smaller ones that are good or bad indicators if we're going in the right direction, such as number of leads generated or connection rate, good conversion rates. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is qualified meetings. How many that could be in a month, it really depends on the business. For some, we typically see 4 a month. For others, 6. We've seen 10 to 12 meetings a month from a single SDR towards a customer. There are also enterprise companies that we target, other enterprises, where 2 to 3 meetings a month, it's a huge win, just because their deal sizes are in the millions. So they know that if they get one of those in a year, then it's just a crazy good amount of revenue being returned.
Yeah. And as far as the SDR, like, how many clients do they normally work for? What's the ratio? I used to be in outsourcing, and we had a ratio like VAs to client ratio. What sort of standard ratio of an outsourced SDR to client?
Mostly up to 2. We do have several reps working on one account. Those are usually more the junior reps, people that came to the organization not too long ago, and they need to adjust to the time management portion of it. Most of the senior SDRs, they're working on 2 accounts, and we in the past we try to do it on 3 accounts, test how things work out, but it's just too much from what we've seen. So we just stick to 2 accounts. They know how to perfectly manage their time and also their opportunities, and just kind of like provide a good full 8-hour workday.
Yeah. Okay. And so from a client's point of view, are they having a full time, or are they using part time? What options have you got?
Just full time. All of our employees are full time employees. Even those that work on one account, they sometimes tend to make more activities while they're on that one account, so that they can boost up the number of leads that they're getting.
Right. Yeah. But from your perspective, you only do full time people, not a part time person. Yeah, great. And accents, right? And different countries. So most of you got 65 plus people in the business. So most of them are based in Europe. But as you said,
Mhm.
the US is your sort of key market. Like, yeah, how do you go with accents, or have you found the difference in accents?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I'm from Macedonia. One of our co-founders, he is Macedonian, so that's why we kind of created this hub here. We also have people from Serbia, from Albania. In the past, we've really had people from Egypt, from Bosnia, from I remember people from Ireland. You know, everywhere where it makes some economical sense to outsource this and obviously still get profit margins. The thing about these countries that I just mentioned is that we're very Americanized. I personally grew up watching Cartoon Network, and that's how I learned English in the first place.
Yes.
Obviously, later on in school and private classes and whatnot, but most of the people here who know English, and trust me, a lot of young people know, probably most of them know English. They've learned the same way, just by consuming a lot of media, consuming cartoons, movies, TV series, video games. Something that's very interesting happening, maybe even a bit more frightening, is like kids who are still in primary school, for example, they speak more English than they speak Macedonian, for example. Sometimes it's very strange when you go to a grocery store and you see some kids with their backpacks and they're talking English. They're not talking Macedonian. So it's become kind of like a phenomena, but it's again tied to, you know, they watch YouTube and everything is in English, so they naturally develop a better sense, better vocabulary, better sense, better expression in English. So once that evolves into the professional world, it feels natural as well.
Yeah, and I must admit, as someone with a very strong accent, an Australian accent, I work in US
Oh,
and
I
Canada
love the
every day,
Australian
and
accent.
it works. I think we're certainly evolved past that. I think there's certain countries with a particular accent that
Mm,
is just hard to hear, and
mm.
that's often in the Asian region. But I think generally, Europeans and Americans now, it's pretty transparent, and it's good to hear that that's not a barrier. So the last question, I know you got
Yeah.
one of the offerings that you're looking to release, and this is just coming out in July, so I'm assuming it'll be in market by then, is just help with entering data, follow up, those things that an owner just gets too busy to do. So just tell us a little bit about what's in that offer.
Yeah, it's actually been out for quite some time. We have several paying clients, but we call it pipeline management. You know how salespeople are infamous about, you know, not updating their CRM and not setting tasks for next steps in deals. Just total disorganization in their CRM, along with due dates, or rather a lack of due dates, or dollar amounts, these type of things. So really, what pipeline management helps is we also deploy a person who we call a business opportunity manager, BOM. They act as kind of like a project manager within your CRM. So they help out usually account executives, and a lot of the times, just again with founder-led sales. I know people like to wear many hats when it comes to startups or just
Yes.
small businesses, and they just don't have the time to follow up. They might have a great conversation with someone, but something might happen and then they go dark for a couple of weeks, and then the next thing you know, it's been a couple of months and you're just left with, I had a good conversation, but no, no next steps, no demo presentation, no request for proposal, nothing of that sort. So we aim to help in that process, just in the gaps when it comes to moving deal from one stage to the next stage. We do it in a very strategic manner. And that's kind of like the whole point. Very diligent, and at the end of the day, you get more deals won, and one more thing that's super important: faster sales cycle times. Imagine if you have on average a 6-month sales cycle. Imagine cutting that down to 4.5 months. You get one and a half more months of billing and invoicing. So that's more money in your pocket.
Yeah, and I think just a reminder you listen to Filip Popov episode 550, and I think we're always wearing two hats when you're listening to a podcast like this. Is one is your own business, so how could an outsource SDR help you as the owner of a tech consulting business, but the other thing is how could it help your clients? And I think when you go and implement a sales CRM, no matter what what the flavor, often that's the gap, right? Is that. So I think that service would be fantastic for some of your clients, and you could definitely, on-sell that on behalf of Growth Era. So I wanted to mention that at the end. What we're going to do is just pause for a moment, Philip. We're going to thank our sponsors, and then we'll come back into the rapid fire. Ever spotted your dream client on LinkedIn only to find yourself bogged down in tedious data transfer at the expense of building that critical relationship? Say goodbye to manual tasks and hello to efficiency with Surfy, S-U-R-F-E. Surfy transforms you from a virtual assistant into a sales pro by seamlessly capturing, syncing, and enriching contacts from LinkedIn into your preferred sales platform, be it Salesforce, HubSpot, Pipedrive, Copper, or even Google Sheets, all in one single click. Imagine reclaiming those precious hours spent on data entry and redirecting them towards nurturing valuable connections and closing deals, which we all love to do. With Surfy, it's not just a dream, it's your new reality. Ready to invest your sales time where it truly matters? Try Surfy today by visiting our resource page at paulhigginsmentoring.com/resources and clicking on Surfy. Elevate your sales game with Surfy, because your success starts after the click. You ready for the rapid fire? I'm going to ask you 4 questions and you give me rapid responses.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, great. Well, what are some of the daily habits that you do to help in your role?
Yeah, so as a company, we use EOS traction. If anyone is unfamiliar, it's I don't know even how to say it, but it's a very operational management style. I think most companies should use them, kind of like the 90-day life cycle, where each person, each role in the organization, more on the management side and the leadership side, they get their very own projects to increase the output or just improve some things within the organization. So I think, just sticking to that 90-day plan and doing the tasks for those 90 days for that quarter is how I do to improve our company at large.
Right. And where do you go to learn more about sales?
I gotta be honest, I'm a big consumer of content. So anything from YouTube, from LinkedIn is also, it can be a good and bad source depending on who you follow. Books, obviously. I mean, Chris Voss, his book Never Split the Difference has been crucial. I recently followed his broadcast channel on Instagram. He just gives out daily nuggets. Jeb Blunt has great fanatical prospecting. I also love psychology books, sales and psychology. They're very interconnected. Yeah, there's a lot of places that that you can learn more about sales, I guess.
Right. And if I could grant you one wish for your role, what would that be?
Just, I guess, more creative strategies would be a good one. I feel like I'm missing some of that.
Yeah, well, I think all of us have got to work harder, and as I said, we're recording this in the middle of the year of 2024, and the easy wins are becoming harder and harder to find. So I feel, and the last one is knowing what you know now in your role at Growth Era. What do you wish you had have known earlier?
Well, I'm gonna tie this in with the last question. It's really about I feel like when I came to this role, there was, nothing laid out for me. So I kind of like needed more direction. We did a lot of testing. So I think, just having known some of the best practices would have been something that would make my life a bit more easier. So I would definitely go with that.
All right, awesome. Well, we've been talking to Filip Popov, and it's Growth Era, so so growthera.com, but all the links will be in the show notes. And also, if you mention this show, and in particular you mention the episode 550, that's why I've said it a few times through the podcast, you'll get a 10% discount on the services they provide. So please take advantage of that. But Filip, thanks a lot for coming on, and I suppose helping us better understand outsourced SDRs, and also giving some great tips on the ways that we can use them. So thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great. I mean, I love talking about these things, so I think this was a good chat.
Excellent. That was a great interview with Filip. As I said, you've got 2 hats. One is where you might need an outsourced SDR for yourself. I know you've normally got a large ticket size and you just don't get chance to do things, but also you could introduce Growth Era to help with some of your clients because you see the gaps every day. And I think that pipeline management would be a great complement to you implementing a sales CRM. Quickly, the podcast that I mentioned where I learn more about outsourced sales is Jason Day's Outbound. Make It Happen by John Burrows, BARROWS, and also 30 Minutes to Presence Club. But if you don't want to listen to all those and you just want the best of that summarized, just come and join the Tech Collective where you'll get that. Reach out to Filip on LinkedIn and thank him for the show and also ask him any questions that he's got. Also share it with your peers if you think there's an opportunity there for them to tap into outsourced SDRs. There's nothing worse than keeping it to yourself. Also mention the show and episode 550 to get 10% off from Growth Era. And also don't forget to watch the episode on the Paul Higgins YouTube channel. I'll see you next time on the Paul Higgins Show. Time for action. Let me know what you implemented from the show. I promise to respond. Plus, get the Tech Consultants Roadmap at paulhigginsmentoring.com/roadmap.